The LouieTeeNetwork is powered by MusicHead University. MusicHeads, classes in session. Turn me up. Enroll on YouTube now. Link is in the description.
Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome to the Command Post. You know what is. Post up. Take command. Of course, I'm your Commander-in-Chief, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. So you're probably wondering what prompted this video. I told you I wasn't going to see you until the Super Bowl. And so let me tell you what prompted this video. By now, you've probably all seen the season in review video that the Commanders have put out on social media and on their YouTube channel. And I can't get enough of this stuff. You guys know that this season was just so magical, right? Just so captivating. And me and my son, we sat down and watched it like it was a movie. You should have seen him. He had a bag of Cool Ranch Doritos. I had my cashews and almonds, and we're just sitting here like we didn't just, like, I didn't watch the entire season, and I've seen all of this stuff, right? But you get the clips from Terry, you know, you get the 2 claps and a Ric Flair, woo, from Oos, and you relive it all over again. And I'm just sitting there, right? And my son's just sitting there. I remember that, Dad. I remember when we beat the Falcons. You know, we were sitting on the couch. I remember that game, Dad. That was the game against the Lions in the playoffs when you got up and you ran and he said it was a foot race. Like, we were just sitting there like we hadn't seen this stuff before, right? It's just so after sitting there and watching that, I was like, man, what a season it was. And I started to think to myself about this offseason that's coming up, because I think this is going to be a massive offseason in my mind. And this is what I told myself, and I could be wrong. But I envision this offseason for us being a lot like the Houston Texans offseason last year when they realized, whoa, we got something here in CJ Stroud, and we have to capitalize while he's still on this rookie deal. It gives us the best chance. The window is its most open while he's still on this rookie contract. And you saw what the Texans did last season. Traded for Joe Mixon. Went out and traded for Stephon Diggs. Signed Danielle Hunter. They went all in last offseason. They did. They pushed their chips to the center of the table. It didn't work because of the injuries, but it wasn't for a lack of trying. They were aggressive, right? I think you're going to see something similar from us. I expect us to go after a big name, you know, corner in free agency. I expect us to be aggressive in the edge rusher market, right? Whether it's trading for Myles Garrett if he becomes available or some other avenue. I expect us to be aggressive in attacking the receiver position, whether that's, and I don't think you're going to be seeing this team just say, oh, well, we'll just, you know, draft a rookie and hope he develops, you know, before Jayden's rookie contract runs out. I don't think that's what you're going to see, right? I'm not telling you that they're not going to draft a receiver. I'm not telling you that they're not going to draft a defensive end / edge rusher. I'm not telling you they're not drafting a left tackle or they're not going to draft a corner to develop. I'm not telling you that, but what I'm telling you is they need veterans that they know can come in and get the job done now if you're trying to maximize this window. And I started to think about what this offseason is going to look like. But I also started to think about, well, what can we expect from the guys that got drafted last year? Because they're as much a part of this team continuing to grow as anything else, right? A lot of those guys we signed last year, a lot of them won't be back. Let's face it. We had with over 30 guys on this roster last year that weren't here the year before. That number is going to be very similar this year, right? When it's all said and done. It won't be, you know, 60% of the roster being overhauled this year. It won't be. But it'll be 45%. It'll be 40% of this roster. I don't expect Jamison Crowder, and maybe he might be back. I don't expect him to be back. I don't expect Jeremy McNichols to be back next year. Michael Davis and De'Ami Brown may not be back, right? But we know Benjamin St. Juste isn't going to be back. We already saw them get rid of Jamin Davis. They already got rid of Fedarian Mathis. We know this roster is going to look vastly different next season. But you know who is going to be here? All of the guys they drafted last year, or at least most of them, okay? There's no guarantee that all of them will be here, but most of them should be here. So with that in mind, I want to talk about that draft class. And again, it's early. And I always caution you with, it's early. So don't overreact to anything that you see on the negative side, right? It's okay to overreact to the positive things you've seen and expect those things moving forward. But don't overreact to the negative things that you've seen or the guys that didn't produce at the level that you were expecting them to produce at based off of where they were selected in the draft, okay? So we'll go through that here in a second, right? But before we do that, I talked about this last week, maybe this past Thursday when we went live command post style. Either way, I talked about Washington and their Super Bowl odds for next season. And I said, man, I'm telling you, when those odds get released, we're going to be top 8. I told you guys somewhere in there. I said, we'll probably be 3rd or 4th in the NFC overall, and we'll probably be 7th or 8th overall in the entire conference. Well, I've got some numbers for you. So with that said, let's go inside the odds, brought to you by Bet US.
Inside the odds.
Looking for a new book? Bet US has you covered. Fastest payouts in the industry. Get up to 10% back on your net losses twice a year as long as you've been active within the last 6 months. And here's the big kicker. If you've never used Bet US before, I've got a deal for you. Use the promo code YouTube150 to get you a 150% sign-up bonus on your first deposit up to $2,000 and a 125% sign-up bonus on your next 2 deposits up to $2,000 when you use the promo code YouTube150. They've also got a casino, so check that out as well. BetUS got you covered. So with that said, these odds pull straight off of the BetUS website, and they've got so many other things that you can bet on. Super Bowl's going to be tomorrow. Tons of prop bets, national anthem, Gatorade color, you name it, you can bet on it. Head over to BetUS, check them out. But I got this straight off of their website. Super Bowl 60 winner odds. And would you look at that? Would you look at that? The Washington Commanders have the 7th best odds in the NFL, tied with the Cincinnati Bengals at plus 1,600 to win the Super Bowl. Last year, we were, I can't even imagine where we were at this time last year. My guess is we were down there somewhere where the Titans, Saints, and Giants are right now, right? We had the number 2 overall pick. So we were probably down there where the Titans are at plus 10,000 or the Giants at plus 15,000. That's my guess, right? Wow, what a difference a year makes. We are now plus 1,600. And I think I'm going to put $100 down. I'm going to be honest with you. I think I'm going to slap 100 or 150 bucks down because I think we got a shot. We made it to the NFC Championship game this season. And I get it. Our schedule is going to be way tougher. We play the Chiefs. We play the Chargers, right? We play the Packers, the Vikings, the Lions, the Bears. We know it's going to be a tough schedule. The Lions are Eagles twice. The Cowboys should be better twice. Giants should be better twice. I'm aware that this schedule is going to be tougher, but we are going to be better. So looking at this, we have the 4th best odds in the conference behind Philadelphia, rightfully so. They're in the Super Bowl. Detroit, they were in the NFC Championship game, had the best record in the conference, were the number 1 seed this year. and the San Francisco 49ers. They were in the Super Bowl last year. Until otherwise notified, they're going to be good every year. They had a bunch of injuries. That's what stopped them from being good this year. If Christian McCaffrey comes back fully healthy and they can, put aside all of the other nonsense, and Deebo Samuel doesn't get traded, and Brandon Ayuk comes back healthy, and Trent Williams comes back healthy, you expect the 49ers to be good again. Understandably so. And then right after them, there we sit. 4th in the conference, 7th overall, in the league. We haven't been this high in terms of Super Bowl odds since the 2000 season, since going into the 2000 season, after we won a playoff game the year before in 99, made it to the divisional round, and was within a botched field goal snap of advancing to the championship game, and then having Dan Snyder go apeshit in free agency, signing the likes of Deion Sanders, Bruce Smith, Jeff George, Mark Carrier, etc., etc., etc. You got to go all the way back to the start of the new millennium. The last time we had this good odds to win the Super Bowl. When I tell you I'm expecting a massive offseason for this Commanders football team, this is why. There are expectations now. Whether you like them or you don't like them, there are expectations. And I'm excited about it. And I want to see how they handle it. And I got no doubts that this group is different than the past groups that didn't handle expectation well. These guys are built different. And every time you watch, did you see the way they ended that season in review video that I referenced earlier with Dan Quinn talking about needing those battle scars? He said, we had everything. But the one thing we didn't have was the battle scars. Well, we got them now. We got them now. You hate to have to experience that. You hate having, and it's funny because it was a similar message after week 1 when we lost at Tampa. It's tough. It was a similar message when we had the 3-game slide. Hey, adversity hits. What are you going to do? Right? Adversity usually prompts fight or flight response. Which one are you going to do? You going to run when things get tough, or are you going to fight? I just need to know who I'm dealing with. Well, we saw the makeup of this team, the mental makeup of this team, the physical makeup of this team. Guys fought through injuries. Guys stayed mentally locked in. Bobby Wagner looked at that team, looked at the media, looked at us as fans and said, this is not a good team, it's a great team. And everybody's going to write the story of this team because we lost 3 in a row, and they're going to write us off. Well, I'll tell you right now, you come back and you talk to me after 4 games or whatever we got left. We'll see what's happening then. Boy, was he right. We didn't lose another game after he said that to the NFC Championship game. So I got no doubts that they're going to come back and they're going to be a tough-minded team, better on paper. Now they got to go out and prove it. But this right here, these odds that you see in front of you, they speak to the level of confidence. And I don't know if you got the sense from the Super Bowl week that was just now, but Jayden Daniels was the hottest thing smoking in New Orleans. I don't know if you noticed or not. Everybody wanted a piece of 5, right? Everybody had the Washington Commanders on the tip of their tongue. There's only one reason why. We got one of them once. These odds reflect that, right? Look at all the teams on this list. Either you've got one of them ones at quarterback, you've got an elite roster, or you've got both. And you can't have a slouch at quarterback, but you got to have an elite, team around that guy if he's not one of them ones. Look at the list. Kansas City, one of them ones. Baltimore, one of them ones. Philadelphia, elite team around a good quarterback. Buffalo, one of them ones. Detroit, elite team around a good quarterback. San Francisco, an elite team around a good quarterback. Commanders, one of them ones. Bengals, one of them ones. It's not hard. This equation isn't hard. So, love where we sit. Love where we sit. So, let's talk about Jayden Daniels real quick. So, on the topic of JD5, one of the things that stood out to me was he said he wanted to bulk up this offseason, get stronger, put on some armor. We've heard that before. You know who else said that? Lamar Jackson, right? And it's not uncommon for a guy that has a slender frame and build to want to put on some armor, right? Lamar Jackson did the same thing. But you know what Lamar Jackson then ultimately did like 2-3 years later? He shed the armor and went back to his natural weight, the weight that he came into the league at, essentially, because he felt like it slowed him down and it didn't allow him to be himself. I just don't want Jayden to get away from who he is, right? I don't mind him putting on weight, getting physically stronger, because that position and the way he plays the game demands that you take punishment, and you need to be physically able to withstand the punishment that comes with playing the quarterback position in the NFL, especially when you're a mobile quarterback like Jayden Daniels. The biggest thing you can do is protect yourself. Honestly speaking, to me, a lot of injuries, the most gruesome ones, they usually happen in the pocket. Believe it or not. You know, outside the pocket, if you know how to protect yourself, you should be fine. It's when you're standing in there. The worst hit we saw Jayden take this season, the two worst hits, they were both in the pocket. Against Tampa on the first touchdown pass he threw to De'Ami Brown. Or was it the one to Terry on fourth down? I think it was the one to De'Ami at the very beginning when they hit him in his leg. And then the one he took against the Falcons, when we thought, oh my God, he bent backwards and you're like, oh my God. Well, oh my God. They bent him up like a pretzel and he just popped up. I don't want him to lose that wiry strength chasing after armor, right? So there's a fine balance. I hope he finds that fine line, allows him to continue to be the dynamic athlete that he is, and allows him to be that wiry strength, you know, wiry strong, so that he can be Gumby and he can bounce back up from those, you know, crazy looking hits. Just want him to keep that dexterity, right? Don't become, you know, this robotic, mechanical type guy because you're trying to be, you know, stronger and put on this armor. But again, I trust him and his team and everyone that he's working with, that they'll kind of find a happy medium there, right? Anyway, I digress. So let's go ahead and dive into this draft from 2024. This is the foundational draft, right? This is what we thought the 2022 draft was going to be when Rivera was here, when we traded back and picked up Jahan Dotson, and that netted us Brian Robinson Jr., and it also allowed us to draft Cole Turner. And, you know, we were like, oh my God, this is the foundational draft, right? You get Sam Howell in the 5th round, and you get Cole Turner in the 5th round, and you get Brian Robinson Jr. in the 3rd round, and you get, Jahan Dotson in the 1st round. And oh my God, look at this draft class that we just put together. And it wasn't a foundational draft. It wasn't a foundation building draft. This one is. It's a new GM, his first outing, a class that is going to set the foundation for what it means to be a commander moving forward. And it's the seminal point in our history where we turn the corner and get back to winning. So this is a foundational draft. Let's talk about Adam Peters' first draft. And we'll go in sequential order of the way these picks were made. And we'll talk about XYZ players' season. And then I'll finish up with their grade overall. And then when we're done, we'll give the draft as a whole an overall grade. And I'd love to hear from you guys out there as to what you think the grade for this draft or in any individual player should be. That said, let's start with our first round pick, second overall, quarterback Jayden Daniels. I don't really need to explain to you why this is a home run pick here, but let's just talk about his season first. And you know what you also have to take into consideration too when you talk about these players is you got to talk about other factors other than just the play on the field. Whether that was availability, that's big. Sometimes I don't think guys get enough credit for availability. And this season, a lot of the rookies that we drafted were pretty durable. You know, Sands for one in particular. Everybody that got drafted was relatively healthy this season, or they played through injuries, and you have to take that into consideration as well. Jayden Daniels made 16 starts this season, started all 17 games. Made 17 starts, completed 69% of his passes on 480 attempts, which is fantastic. For over 3,560 yards, 3,568 yards to be exact, 25 touchdowns, 9 interceptions to go along with 148 rushes for 891 yards and 6 touchdowns. Led the team in passing, obviously, but also simultaneously led the team in rushing as well. 31 touchdowns that he was responsible for on the season, only 9 interceptions, and a belief in a fan base, in a coaching staff, but probably most importantly in a locker room that was unwavering, that if they got into a late game situation with him having the football, they couldn't lose. And as a fan, I now know what Kansas City Chiefs fans feel like. All they want to do is get to the end of a ball game with 15 having the football. They don't feel like they're going to lose. And now I know what that feeling feels like. Having watched Jayden Daniels do it over and over and over and over and over and over again, I now know what that feeling is like when you think there's no way we're losing if my guy has it last. How confident were you when we won the toss in overtime against Atlanta? I had no doubts they would never see the football again. It was over. You know how good of a feeling that is as a fan? When you get the ball late and you're like, it's over. We're going to win. He instills that kind of confidence in every single person in that locker room. From the maintenance guy to the equipment man and manager, to every single player on the roster, to every single member of the coaching staff, to every member of the front office, and every single fan watching in attendance or at home. He's changed the way that we view the future of this franchise. We went from hoping and believing, or hoping with our fingers crossed, to believing, expecting. It all starts with Jayden Daniels. I don't have to tell you this, but of course, I'm going to tell you this. He's an A+. A+++, right? So then you go to the second round, 36th overall selection. Defensive tackle out of Illinois, Jerzon Newton. Or as we affectionately call him, Johnny Newton. Or as everybody else calls him, Johnny Newton. High hopes for him moving forward. By no means this grade that he's about to receive does it speak to how I feel about him moving forward. But I've already told you this. There's no surprise here. I was disappointed in his rookie campaign. I expected more from him. But you also have to take into consideration that he didn't have much of an offseason because he was nursing his way back from the surgery that he had in the offseason. He wasn't able to perform at any of the off-season or postseason all-star events leading up to the draft. He wasn't able to produce any kind of times or numbers because he wasn't able to work out pre-draft, right? So missed a lot of time. And when he came back, it was more so just trying to get back on the field than working on technique, getting better, et cetera, et cetera. That said, he played in 16 games this season. He had 44 total tackles. 19 of them were solo tackles. He had 2 sacks on the season, 1 forced fumble against the Bears, 1 fumble recovery, again, against the Bears. He had 7 stuffs this season. That's a good number, right? Stuffs, in case you're wondering what those are, tackles at or behind the line of scrimmage. He had 7 of them. That's a good number. And he had 1 pass breakup, 1 pass deflection at the line of scrimmage. So, again, solid season, right? But those are numbers I'd expect from a 4th or a 5th round pick. Okay. Like, those numbers don't jump out at you and go, oh, wow, we got us one. And there weren't many times this season when I looked at Johnny Newton and said, oh, yeah, we got us one. I saw a good hustle. I saw a guy with a good motor. I saw a guy that at times looked overmatched from a size perspective. He looks undersized at times. I saw a guy that was on the field, which is the most important thing. Availability is the best ability, right? It's the most important ability. He was available. And in a season where we were down Jonathan Allen, Cleveland Farrell was not a guy that you necessarily wanted to be relying on. And we had injuries along the defensive line to the point where we were seeing guys like Carl Davis and Sheldon Day. And we had to go out and sign guys to bring in to help on this defensive line. I thought that his availability was huge. That said, when you spend a fringe first-round pick on a player, which Johnny Newton was at the 36th overall pick, you're talking about the 5th selection. Let's see, 33rd, 34th, 35th, 4th selection, excuse me, of the 2nd round. We need more production out of that guy than that. So with that said, Johnny Newton for me was a D+ in his rookie season. I think he's going to be better. I don't think we've seen the best of Johnny Newton. He's going to have a full offseason to dedicate to his craft. He'll be coming along in the program like everybody else. He won't be nursing an injury. He won't be rehabbing from surgery. He won't be behind the 8 ball like he was this season. He said he's working out with Jonathan Allen in the offseason. That's going to help him. He knows what the league is about now. I expect him to be better. But I thought it was a D season, and I gave him a plus because he was available. He was available. And I don't take that for granted either. So, D+ for Johnny Newton. I expect bigger and better things from him moving forward. Next 2nd round pick, remember we had 3 of them. 50th overall, Commanders selected cornerback Mike Sainristil out of Michigan. I loved this pick when it was made. You guys knew how I felt about Mike Sainristil. I talked about Mikey Sainristil actually 2 years ago when I saw him at Michigan playing corner, at Michigan playing safety and being their nickel. And I said, man, This guy's super impressive. And then I heard all of the things about his leadership qualities, and I was like, man, what I wouldn't do to have a guy like that on our team. But I didn't think we'd be in a position to draft him, right? So I was like, yeah, that's cool, but we'll never get that guy. And then when we traded back, I said, we're right in that window of where he should come off the board. And I was elated when they selected him because I knew what kind of football player we were getting. What I didn't know was what type of versatility we were getting. I knew we were getting a dog-ass competitor. I knew we were getting a leader, a man amongst men. I knew we were getting a winner. We saw all of that at Michigan. What I didn't know is that I was going to get a guy because initially he was thought to be more of a safety / nickel type guy. What I did not anticipate was this guy was going to be thrusted into the outside cornerback role, and he was going to attack that the same way we expected him to attack the nickel slot position. He was a saving grace for us this season at a position that he wasn't even supposed to be playing. And oftentimes he was outmatched outside. And he still held it down in typical fro zone fashion. Let's talk about his season. Mike Sainristil played in all 17 games. Had 93 tackles on the season. 62 of them solo. He had 1 tackle for loss. He had 14 pass breakups, the most of any rookie this season. He had 2 interceptions. Those were regular season interceptions. He then added 2 more in the postseason. He had a forced fumble against Tennessee and a fumble recovery against Tennessee on the same play when he stripped the football from Titans running back Tony Pollard. He was phenomenal this season. Absolutely phenomenal. If not for, and I'm not going to beat him up for this, right? But he can't help that he's not the fastest guy in the world. And the fact that he was able to do the things that he did this season despite not being the fastest guy in the world, it just adds to the mystique and the aura that is around Mike Sainristil. Mike Sainristil is an A this season, without question. Almost an A+. Didn't want to go too far and give him an A+, but he was an A. A solid smack dab A. We feel like we got us one at the cornerback position. In a pinch, if you have to, you can move him outside. But I'm hoping, and this is the thing we don't know about Mike Sainristil. I'm hoping he's just as good inside as he was outside. We can't be sure because, remember, he was struggling a little bit inside early in the season. So I can't be assured that he's going to go inside and just be as good as he was on the outside. But this is what I do know. He's going to tackle in there. He's going to fight in there. We're going to probably be able to blitz him a little bit more. And he's going to come up and he's going to be a physical defender inside as a slot defender. I do know all of those things. Next second round pick. 53rd overall, 3 picks later, the Commanders select tight end Ben Sinnott out of K-State. Now, we've had a lot of discussions surrounding Ben Sinnott this past season, and rightfully so. He was a bit of a disappointment, and that's putting it mildly. I'm being nice, okay? When you draft a guy in the second round, you don't expect 5 catches on 5 targets for 28 yards and 1 touchdown. And that's it. It's not like we had 3 tight ends in front of him, stopping him from getting on the field. It's not like they didn't put him on the field in situations to get him opportunities. He just wasn't effective. Now, did they go out of their way to scheme up plays to give him opportunities to touch the football? No. but that's what Zach Ertz was for. I saw a guy competing as a blocker. I saw a guy that didn't always get the assignment right necessarily. And I thought that's why we saw, coupled with the fact that he was battling through injury late in the season. But I thought that's why we saw his snap count dwindle. They didn't feel like they could trust him in certain situations to get his responsibility done, right? We saw the same thing from Luke McCaffrey, right? Remember, Luke was playing a lot early in the season, and his snaps started to dwindle as they started to lose a little faith in him. Jayden never had a ton of faith in him, right? Because we saw Luke open quite a bit. We'll get to him in a little while. But Ben Sinnott never had the trust of Jayden Daniels, never had the trust of this staff, lost some of that trust as some of the blocking assignments that he was given, weren't being executed at the level that they felt like he could. And then he started dealing with injuries. The shoulder was a big one late in the season. But he was fighting through it. But make no mistake about it. 5 catches for 28 yards and 1 touchdown as a second-round pick isn't nearly good enough on a roster that was void of elite pass-catching options. You had Terry McLaurin and Zach Ertz. That was it. So there should have been a bigger slice of the pie for a guy that was a second-round pick like Ben Sinnott. There should have been a lot more opportunities in 12 personnel for Ben Sinnott, but there weren't. And so he's a guy, if you ask me, along with Jer'Zhan Newton, those are the 2 guys next year. There's a third as well. That if you ask me who's going to take the biggest leap next season, I would tell you it's Ben Sinnott, Johnny Newton, and Jordan McGee. Now, here's what I'm going to tell you right now you should be looking out for. Here's what I'm going to tell you what you should be looking out for. They're going to tell us how they feel about Ben Sinnott by how they attack free agency and the draft. The expectation for most fans, like myself, is that Zach Ertz will be brought back next season. He also will be a year older, right? Now, he exceeded expectations, but you can't just assume that 35-year-old, because he's 34 right now, 35-year-old Zach Ertz is just going to be as good as 34-year-old Zach Ertz was. Can't assume that he's just going to be the second leading receiver on the team, catch everything that's thrown to him, be a red zone dynamo, and all of the things that he provided us for or with last season. Can't assume that. We hope that's the case, but you can't be assured of that. Here's what their activity this offseason at the tight end position, because remember, John Bates is also a free agent along with Zach Ertz. And also keep in mind, they like Colson Yankoff. We'll talk about him a little bit later on. If they go out in free agency and sign a tight end, and there are some options, and I told you about it the other night when we went through free agency, we looked at the tight end position. I told you there were 2, maybe 3 names. There was another name that I didn't bring up in Mike Gesicki that they could be interested in, but there were 2 names in particular that I showed you that I said, hey, don't be surprised if they went sniffing around these guys if they're looking for an athletically gifted guy that can upgrade the position as a pass catcher. If they go out and they sign another tight end, in addition to bringing back Zach Ertz, that spells trouble for Ben Sinnott. Now, it doesn't mean he's out of the mix or out of the rotation. It just means he's going to have to earn his way back to being the second tight end behind Zach Ertz. There's no guarantees that that's where he's going to sit going into next, offseason. If they draft another tight end, that might be even more damning than them signing somebody in free agency. Now, once again, if it's just a blocking tight end and they don't bring John Bates back and it's a blocking tight end, somebody they draft in the 7th round that they don't expect much from other than to be able to put somebody's dick in the dirt, all right, Ben should be safe. But if it's another all around, like if they draft a tight end in the first 2 rounds, because this is supposed to be a very talent-rich tight end draft class. We could see 2 tight ends go in the first round. We probably will see 2 tight ends go in the first round. And then we could see a slew of other tight ends go between, day 2 and early stages of day 3. It's supposed to be a very tight end deep draft. If they select a tight end within that range, that could be a sign that maybe they don't believe in Ben Sinnott all that much. I highly doubt that we'll see aggressive behavior from this organization at the tight end position, them giving up on a second round pick only 1 year in. I don't think we're going to see that at all. But again, how they go out in free agency in the draft and attack tight end will tell us how they feel about Ben Sinnott after 1 year and how he fits in the grand scheme of things. Obviously, it wasn't a great first season, but I think Ben Sinnott can be and will be better. I think they will take a step back and look at what he does well, because he's not a nuanced route runner. We knew that when we drafted him out of K-State. We knew that. We knew he was an inline guy, a guy that could get up the field vertically, a guy that could run wheel routes and seam routes and, corners and posts, things like that, right? We knew he wasn't a nuanced, detailed route runner. He wasn't going to snap off on somebody and run an angle route like Zach Ertz can. He wasn't going to run this crisp 15-yard dig route, right? Like Zach Ertz can. He's not going to run these choice routes like Zach Ertz can. That's not Ben Sinnott's game. They knew that when they drafted him. So now it's their job to implement him into the offense and give him opportunities to be productive. And I think they'll go back, assess his first season, and try to integrate him better into the offense. And you'll feel differently about Ben Sinnott this time next year than you do right now. But yes, it was a very disappointing season for a guy that was drafted in the second round. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Now we move to the third round. 67th pick overall, offensive lineman Brandon Coleman, drafted out of TCU. And he is a very polarizing selection for a number of reasons. I'll tell you this. I appreciate Brandon Coleman more now than I did before we drafted him. Because what I didn't know when we drafted him was, is Brandon Coleman an actual starting NFL offensive lineman? I didn't know. Tackle, guard, I didn't know if he could cut it at either. Well, here's what I do know. Brandon Coleman is a starting offensive lineman in the NFL. I've already told you that, though. Here's what I think I know. I think he's a guard. I've said that a million times. That's not new news to you. But we started him 12 games this season at left tackle. He played in 16 games this season at left tackle. At one of the premium positions this league has, protecting our most valuable asset, he fought his ass off. Despite having multiple injuries. Shoulder. He started the season with a shoulder injury. That never healed the entire year. Okay? He then added a knee injury, an MCL injury to the mix. And he missed a game due to a concussion against the Bears. He never complained. He didn't come out of games. He fought through injury, and he gave us everything he had. And I appreciate Brandon Coleman now more than I ever have before. That said, I want him at guard, okay? I still think he should be our starting left guard next season. He should be in a battle this offseason with Nick Allegretti for the right to be the starting left guard of this football team. With that said, Brandon Coleman played in 16 games, started 12 of them, all at left tackle, and I thought he was extremely solid. But I'm not looking for solid at the most important position on the offensive line when you're talking about a right-handed quarterback protecting his blind side. I need extraordinary over there. that he is not at tackle, but I think he could end up being an extraordinary guard. What I do know is we have a starting offensive lineman that we drafted in the 3rd round out of TCU last year. That brings warm and fuzzies to my heart. Now, are they going to continue this experiment with him at left tackle? I don't know. If they do, I'm not going to be pissed off if they do, because what I didn't know about Brandon Coleman until about maybe, I'd say a month ago, as I was just diving into all this Commanders content, I didn't know, some of his background information. Didn't realize this is only his 6th year of playing organized football. Didn't know that. Didn't know that he hasn't really had stable coaching, hasn't been in the same system for more than 1 year at a time. He's had constant change in his life, former military, brat growing up, constant on the move. I could tell he was a basketball player because he's a tremendous athlete. I've told you that already. Best athlete we've drafted on the offensive line since Trent Williams. We all knew that, though. So what if he just needs stability? What if he just needs another year of learning the position, being more nuanced, not having a shoulder injury, so the punch could be a little bit stronger, right? What if he can turn into a dynamic left tackle? I don't think he can, just for the record. But that's not my decision. If they decide, hey, we think he can be worked with a little bit more and he may be able to, okay, let's see what he's got. I would rather rip the Band-Aid off, move him inside, and let's go get us a left tackle in free agency. That would be my suggestion. But with that said, I thought Brandon Coleman was a C+ this season. You could make the argument he was a B-. To play through all the injuries that he played through, including a concussion, the shoulder injury that pretty much had him miss all of the preseason, which is why Cornelius Lucas was out there starting the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season. To play through the MCL injury that he sustained and to not miss any games other than that Bears game with a concussion speaks volumes to his toughness, his commitment to his teammates, not wanting to let the guy next to him down. Love his toughness, loved his ability to fight this season. Wasn't always pretty, wasn't always clean, but he was super effective this year. C+ for Brandon Coleman. 2nd, 3rd round pick, 100th overall. Commanders select wide receiver Luke McCaffrey out of Rice. This was, if you ask me, of all the picks from Adam Peters' draft, this one was the one that was like a little head scratching. All the receivers that were available at the time, this is the guy you go with. I didn't hate the pick, but if you go back and rewind the tape and you go look at my reaction, you'd say, okay, all right, let's see what you got. This felt like, hey, I know his family. I'm familiar with their work ethic, their dedication. I think I know what I'm getting. I'm not sure, but I think I know what I'm getting. So I'm just going to rely on the fact that I think I know what I'm getting because of his family lineage. Because I just came from San Francisco with his brother. I know his dad. I know what they're about. And I know I'm going to get a good football player, a tremendous athlete, and above all else, a guy that's going to have unrelenting work ethic. That's what that felt like to me. I know the family. I know the bloodline. So I know what I'm getting. I'm not sure if we knew what we were getting from a football player standpoint, though. I feel like I know what Luke McCaffrey is now. 18 catches, 168 yards, no touchdowns on the season on 24 targets. What you also have to consider when you give Luke McCaffrey a grade, is that we put him back there on kickoffs. After Austin Eckler sustained the concussion, we needed somebody to pick up where Austin Eckler left off. And Luke McCaffrey did an admirable job. All right. 10 returns for 299 yards, no touchdowns, with a long of 47. So that's 30 yards per return. Keep in mind, most of those returns aren't being caught at the goal line. They're being caught at the 4 or the 7. So if you're returning it 30 yards on average, you're giving us great field position, which he did. He's no kick returner. Let's not fool ourselves. Okay? He's no kick returner. He's no more kick returner than Dax Milne was, a punt returner. Okay? So let's not try to put him into a position that he's not made to do. But I appreciate him being able to adjust to something on the fly. All right? That said, I think there's more to tap into, just like I do with Ben Sinnott here with Luke McCaffrey. Luke McCaffrey will never be a number 2 receiver in this league. And I think when you're drafting a 3rd round wide receiver, he should at least be a number 2. The ceiling should be, he can be a number 2 in this league. When we drafted Dyami Brown in the 3rd round back in 2021, the expectation is that we're getting a guy that we can play opposite of Terry McLaurin. He did not manifest into that until the very end of his Commander's tenure. And I don't know if it's over or not, but his chances of being the number 2 receiver here are definitely done. Speaking of Dyami Brown. Luke McCaffrey, drafted in the 3rd round, you're automatically putting expectations on him that I don't think he was capable of living up to. Because again, in my mind, and again, what you perceive a 3rd round pick to be and what I perceive a 3rd round pick to be could be 2 different things. In my mind, a 3rd round pick, anything day 2, I need it now. Right? I need it now. Those are instant contributors. And on a roster that looked like ours, a 3rd round pick, a day 2 pick, I need it now. It might as well have been J.G. Wentworth, right? That's my cash, and I need it now. That's our 3rd round wide receiver, and I need him to play now. And he wasn't ready. And this is what happens when you draft a guy that's only been playing the receiver position for 2 years. 2 years. He's raw. So he needs time. I don't think about raw and needing more time in day 2 of the draft. That's a day 3 thing, right? Had you just moved him back around to say the 4th round, which again, the 100th pick is basically the 4th round. Okay? Like, so when you think about it from that context, no harm, no foul. But hey, it's a 3rd round pick. Our brains can't decipher the difference because on the 2nd day of the draft, he was selected. Had he just been selected, what? I think he was the last pick of day 2, if I'm not mistaken. I think the 100th pick is the final pick. I could be wrong about that. After you get through all the compensatories, I think if it's not the 100th pick, it's like the 100th and 7th pick or something like that. He wasn't that far away from the 4th round. Bottom line is, I can tell you right now, after watching Luke McCaffrey in his rookie season, he ain't no number 2 wide receiver. That I can tell you. So I don't know if he'll ever live up to the billing or not. But when we drafted him, I never saw number 2 receiver anyway. So I never put that on him. But here's what I do think he can be. He could be a serviceable 3. I think he can make a damn good 4th option. A hell of a 4th option. But I think he could also make a serviceable 3rd option. We'll need to see more next year to be certain of that. I think he lacks agility. I don't think he'll be able to separate it at a great rate in this league because we've seen how tight his hips are, right? We saw it on the kickoffs. His change of direction isn't great. So he's not going to separate at the top of a route. He's not going to snap off a route, break a dude off something proper, leave his ass at the bus stop and be wide open, which is why I think Jayden wasn't looking for him a ton. Because in order for me to throw you the football when covered, I got to trust you. You want to understand the psychological, like I always talk about my psychology background. Psychology is huge because we're humans. Human brain works a certain way. If I'm a quarterback and I'm going to throw you the football, it's easy to throw to guys that are wide open. If I'm going to throw to you because you're covered, you got to prove to me that you can win even when you're covered if I throw you the ball. Anytime Luke McCaffrey was covered and Jayden Daniels threw him the ball, it got intercepted. I'm not telling you that they were the best throws in the world. But if I'm going to force it to you, or I'm going to throw you the ball when you're covered, I need you to make a play for me. And again, some of Jayden's worst throws were to Luke McCaffrey. The Eagles throw over the middle. He's wide open. I don't know what the hell happened. He let that bitch go. It went high as hell. Luke tried to come back and fight for it. It got tipped in the air, got picked off. That wasn't Luke McCaffrey's fault. Luke was open a lot this season. We've seen it with our own eyes. We watched the film. I'm not telling you he can't get open, but he's not going to get open against tough man coverage with a sticky defender consistently. But you put him in there and you get him in a bunch and they're playing zone, he'll get open. And as we saw, he can do damage with the ball in his hands after he catches it. He almost scored against Cincinnati. I said all of that to say this. Luke McCaffrey for me was a C- this season. Through no fault of his own, probably slightly overdrafted, didn't get enough opportunities, even though he was open. You know, there were opportunities, and I showed you. I remember the game against the Cowboys where Luke breaks open. He does this perfect, second reaction play with Jayden. Jayden rolls out, Luke stays, and then he breaks open. And if Jayden just flicks it to him, it's a touchdown. It's a touchdown. I like what I saw from Luke McCaffrey in his rookie season. But I don't think he'll ever be a number 2 receiver. But I think he can be a very serviceable third option on a good football team that has Super Bowl aspirations. We'll see if that comes to fruition or not. Didn't have a 4th round pick. So you go to the 5th round. And the 139th overall selection was spent on linebacker Jordan McGee out of Temple. Now, this was one of my favorite picks in the draft. After you got past the big names, the Mike Sainristil, the Jayden Daniels, et cetera, et cetera. I got high hopes for Jordan McGee still. I told you. Now, I'm not going to, belabor this point because the next 2 guys, I don't really need to spend a lot of time on because they didn't play. So Jordan McGee gets an incomplete grade. Okay. He did not play enough this season. He suffered an injury in the first preseason game versus the Jets. That injury essentially kept him out of the lineup till probably like week maybe 8, 9, 10, somewhere in that neighborhood. He came back for a brief spell. And then as soon as he came back, matter of fact, I don't think he came back until the I want to say it was like the Titans game, right before the bye. Came back and immediately he got the hamstring injury. He got the hamstring injury in the Eagles game, right? So I think he played in like maybe 3 games this season, max. I love what I saw. He attacked downhill. He was aggressive. He's got athleticism. I think this dude's going to be a steal. Add him to the list of all of the late round gems Adam Peters has been a part of at the linebacker position. That's what I see happening here. We know the names, right? The Fred Warners. I think he might have been a 3rd round pick. Don't quote me on that. But, Fred Warner, Dre Greenlaw, the kid they have out there now in San Francisco, the one that hit Trevor Lawrence that's in Houston right now. what is it? Flanagan Fowles is out there now in San Francisco, and then the one that's in Al-Shire, Aziz Al-Shire. All of those are late round draft picks for the most part. Gems. I think Jordan McGee is going to be another one of those unearthed gems in the 5th round. I feel really good about him, but that's an incomplete grade. You can't give him a grade because he barely played. But I'm expecting him, Ben Sinnott, and Johnny Newton to have breakout years next year. Or not necessarily breakout years, but be much better this year than they were a season ago. Right? Another 5th round pick, 161st pick overall. Safety / linebacker. I think we all feel like he's a linebacker at this point. Dominique Hampton, right? He didn't play this year. He played in 1 game this season, and that was against Dallas in week 12. He didn't record a tackle. He didn't record a stat. So for all intents and purposes, he didn't play this year. So he's another guy that has an incomplete grade. That said, of all of the picks that were made in the draft, and there were 9 of them this past year by Adam Peters in his first draft as Commanders GM, Dominique Hampton is the one guy that I'm not sure is ever going to truly make an impact on this team. Now, I can't say that he won't get an opportunity next year, right? But, you know, what's going to be huge for him is to see how they address the position moving forward, how they address the free agents that we have. If they hold on to Jeremy Chin, we already know Frankie Louvu is going to be here for at least the next 2 years. He signed a 3-year deal. Like, where are you putting Dominique Hampton on the field at? Now, they could have packages where they put him on the field when they want to go with a little bit more athletically gifted group, et cetera, et cetera. But, I mean, in my mind, and this is just the way I'm thinking, in the immediate future, so next year, if you're putting 3 linebackers on the field, assuming we bring Bobby Wagner back, your 3 linebackers are Oos, Bobby Wagner, and Jordan McGee, right? It's not going to be Dominique Hampton. So I'm just trying to find a way to get him on the field. I don't know how you do that. If they bring back Jeremy Chin, how do you get Dominique Hampton on the field? You know, 2 years down the road, maybe he could get on the field if Bobby Wagner's no longer here. But I could see him being a guy that they redshirted him this year without question because they were asking him to make a positional switch. They took him from the safety position, which is what he was in college, and they're converting him to a linebacker, and they said, just learn the position. And we'll see what kind of a sponge he is. I can tell you this, he was always around Bobby Wagner. Remember Bobby Wagner mic'd up? Bobby gave him the football, told him to keep it, right? In that game against Tampa. So he's always around Bobby Wagner, which is a good sign. We'll see if it turns into something or not. But what I can tell you is right now, he doesn't necessarily, I don't see a direct path for him to be impactful, but I'm not giving up on him. But he's an incomplete, obviously, because he didn't play this year. So you go to the final pick of the draft, 7th round, 222nd overall, edge rusher out of Notre Dame, Javontae Jean-Baptiste. Boy, was I wrong about him. And look, he was a 7th round pick. All right. I wasn't expecting much. I watched him at Notre Dame. Didn't jump off the page at me. He's this long, wiry guy, you know, kind of, you know, slender frame, tall, angular. Yeah, didn't really expect much from him. And I didn't think he was going to make the roster, to be honest with you. Didn't think there was a space for him. And damn sure didn't think he was going to impact this roster at all. And what we got from him was actually surprising, because I'm not telling you he was super impactful, but what I am telling you is that he contributed more than we can say about Dominique Hampton, Jordan McGee, and, you know, to a lesser extent, guys like Ben Sinnott and Luke McCaffrey. He contributed. Luke McCaffrey contributed, right? Ben Sinnott contributed, not on the stat sheet, but, you know, as a blocker and things of that nature. Javontae got in there and he held his own. I was surprised. He played in 12 games this season. He had 13 tackles. He had 1 sack against Cincinnati. We all remember that. He pulled the belt off, belt to ass. And he had 1 stuff, right? I was expecting him to be a non-factor like Dominique Hampton, who only played in 1 game. That's what I saw for Javontae Jean-Baptiste. Not only did he make the roster, which was, whoa, kind of jarring for me when the initial 53 came out. I was like, okay, he's a placeholder, right? They're going to go out here. They're going to sign somebody off of somebody else's roster. He won't be here when they get to week 1 against Tampa. Not only was he here, but he was a contributor pretty much the entire season. He played the run a lot more effectively than I thought he was going to. He was a lot stronger at the point of attack than I gave him credit for. They used him in some situations where they dropped him in coverage. They liked that with him because he's a good athlete. I was impressed. I was surprised. Look, he's no top of the rotation edge rusher, right? But what he did submit for me is, hey, you need a back end of the rotation guy? I'm your man. I didn't know what we were getting. That's what a 7th round pick is supposed to be. A guy that can contribute on the back end of a rotation. Well, he checks that box. He checks that box. Javontae Jean-Baptiste for me is a C. I thought he played well this season. And what he's established himself as is if we keep 5 defensive ends, he's the 5th defensive end. Right? He's that guy right there on the fringe. If we keep 4 defensive ends, he might not make it. He might not make the cut. Right? Assuming that we sign a guy in free agency and probably draft another guy, he won't make the cut because you already got Dorrance Armstrong and you already have I was thinking about one more person. We got one more person. Who am I forgetting? Because Klee ain't going to be back. And Dante Fowler Jr. That's what I'm thinking about. And Dante Fowler Jr. I think is going to re-sign here, right? So those are the 2 that I'm just going to pencil in. I can write Dorrance in pen and marker, right? He's here. 3-year contract. He's going nowhere. Dorrance Dante Fowler Jr., he's not under contract. But after doing what he did this year and knowing that that's a Dan Quinn lifer, I don't think he's going anywhere. I'm penciling him in too. And I'm assuming that they're going to sign another guy in free agency because there are options available in free agency at the defensive end / edge rusher position. And they're going to draft another guy. And assuming that they do both, that's 4 defensive ends right there if everyone's healthy. If you want to keep 5, Javontae's right there. You're going to keep 4. Javontae may miss out on the roster, but he'll be right there on the practice squad. And if somebody gets injured, you pull him up and you feel damn good about him being on the back end of your. He's better than Clelin Ferrell. I'll tell you that right now. I like him better than Clelin Ferrell. He's a C. So I want to mention some names. They didn't get grades, but these guys are a part of this draft class, so to speak. They were undrafted. And knowing where we are in our process, I think this year, the undrafted crop is as important as it was last year because we're still building this roster. Now, what I can tell you is we're a little bit further along, obviously, after 1 year under the belt of this regime. So there are not going to be as many roster spots available. However, undrafted guys are going to have a shot, right? So I want to mention a few names that I think that bear mentioning, right? I'm going to start with Tyler Owens, who has established himself as a special teams thing, as I like to call it. You know, you got to have them. You're going to play special teams the way we play special teams, where we're going to kick it in the field of play, in the landing zone, and force you to return it. You need fiends, right? That's the biggest reason why I said, hey, Nick Ballore, there's a spot on my roster for you if you want it. There's a roster spot with your name on it because you're a true definition of a feed. We already know why Jeremy Reeves is here. We already know what he's carved out a niche for himself for in this league. Feed. You can never have enough of these dudes. Tyler Owens, I don't know if he'll ever be a starting caliber safety or even a contributor on defense. Because, again, I've talked about this. Mentally and instinctually, you can see it on film. It ain't there. It ain't there. Now, with more time, more reps, more opportunities, maybe. But here's what we do know he can do right now. He can play on mean special teams. Okay? He can play on mean special teams. And there is value in that in this league. And you need him on your team. He's a lock to be on this roster. As long as he's healthy, he's a lock. Because he serves a purpose. And he may ultimately take over the Jeremy Reeves role here. Right? You know, Jeremy Reeves is still elite at what he does. And he's still relatively young. We're not worried about Jeremy Reeves anytime soon. But eventually, he could be our Matthew Slater, right? Tyler Owens could be. That's what Jeremy Reeves seems like right now. But Tyler Owens could be our Matthew Slater, guy that plays special teams for 15 years, is elite, goes to the Pro Bowl, All-Pro, all that stuff as a special teams guy. By the time you get to the end of his career, you're saying, hey, man, maybe he's a Hall of Famer. On some Bill Bates, Matthew Slater, Steve Tasker shit. Who knows? We'll see. But he's off to a great start as Tyler Owens. I do know that. Colson Yankoff. They like him a lot. And unlike Owens, Yankoff actually has a shot to be on the field as a tight end, I think, this season, which is why I'm not too sure they're going to do anything earth-shattering at the tight end position. Now, I don't think they're going to do anything in free agency, but I wouldn't be shocked if they drafted a guy, and I'm not opposed to it. But they like Colson Yankoff. He's got size. He's got athleticism. He's a core special teams player already. We've seen that. That's what's going to give him a chance to play on offense is, hey, we already know what you can do on special teams. We already know you got a role on this team. Can you give us a little something on offense? We'll see. But you playing special teams is going to give you the chance to see if you can get on the field offensively. He's another guy that I think has a future here. Sam Hartman, undrafted out of Notre Dame. I told you guys already, I don't expect Marcus Mariota to be back. Already told you that. And I already also told you who I think the three quarterbacks are going to be. Yes, we're keeping three next season. I think they're already here. I don't expect us to be in the backup quarterback market this offseason when teams are playing musical chairs with Jameis Winston and, Jacoby Brissett again and Andy Dalton and all of these guys are available. We won't be in that fray. Not this year. We were last year and the year before that and the year before that. We won't be messing around with that shit this year. Because we got our guys already. We got Jeff Driscoll already. He'll be the backup. He's a veteran. He's played in this league. We trust him. He's athletic. You don't have to change the way you play if he has to enter the game. We feel good about that guy. That's why they kept him here last year. So he could learn the system, be comfortable in it. So when Mariota moved on, and again, make no mistake about it, I want Marcus Mariota back. I just think he wants an opportunity to start, which he's not going to get here. If he is resigned to the fact that he's a backup and he's not going to get an opportunity to start elsewhere, he may decide to come back here. But there are going to be opportunities. Like the Raiders probably aren't going to get a quarterback. What's stopping him from going back to Vegas for a reunion with the Raiders and having a chance to start out there? What's stopping him from going back to Tennessee with a reunion with the Titans? They may need a bridge if they don't draft a quarterback in the first overall pick. Maybe they trade back, Still don't take a quarterback, and don't take a quarterback until they get, into the late 20s or in the second round. They still might need a bridge. Whatever the case may be, there'll be opportunities for Marcus Mariota to go elsewhere. Not necessarily to start, but whatever the case may be, Sam Hartman isn't going anywhere. That I can tell you. He and Jayden Daniels are like this. They're damn near best friends on the team. He's definitely, without question, his best quarterback buddy in that room, without question. We've watched the shorts that they've put out, right? When they ask questions and things of that nature. Who's got the best nickname? Sam Hartman was the star of that show. He gave about 5 nicknames for Jayden Daniels. We've seen them walking out to the practice field on different shorts. Who's always walking out together? Sam Hartman and Jayden Daniels. When he works out pregame, when he's throwing the basketballs around and doing all that shit, who's he throwing it to? Who's out there with him? Sam Hartman. Don't think that these things are lost on the organization. Continuity is key. You want your star quarterback to be comfortable. He's comfortable with Sam Hartman. They came into the league together. They have the same quarterback coach. There's a lot of things there that make too much sense. Sam Hartman isn't going anywhere. And he's also a really good locker room guy. He's a hype man. We watched all of the mic'd up videos. Sam Hartman is vocal in a lot of these videos. He's a funny guy. Those guys matter. Good locker room guy, right? Morale is what they call it. Good locker room morale guy. They tried to take Mbusi from us, right? New England tried to take him, and he failed the physical. I said, where you going with my stuff? I need my guy with the chain link around his neck. Hype man. You remember they asked the nickname video? He said, who got the best nickname? And he said, me. And he said whatever his nickname was. And I forgot what he said, but he said something that was funny. Sam Hartman is another one of those dudes that's good for the locker room. I don't see him going anywhere. So another undrafted guy that I think has a future here. And then Ben Nickel. I always keep seeing him on the sidelines. He doesn't go away, right? Not quite sure where he fits in yet. He made a living at Iowa State as a special teams demon. And eventually, at some point, Nick Bellore isn't going to be here anymore. Nick Bellore is like 34 years old, guys and gals, okay? Nick Bellore is no spring chicken. So they may not bring Nick back next year. So at some point, somebody's going to have to take his place. That guy could be Ben Nickel. Okay, he's an athletic freak, is Ben Nickel. Former wide receiver turned safety, core special teamer in college. Ran like a 4.3 something 40, like 4.36, 4.39. Jumped out of the gym. We went over his raw score last offseason through the roof. Tremendous athlete. Can run, can tackle. I wouldn't count him out either. Anyway, I digress. So when you put all of that together, and I did the number crunching for this draft. First draft so far, and again, keep in mind, you don't grade a draft after one season. So we're all clear on that, right? Like, we're just doing this for the purposes of heading into next year. But understanding, this is not the final say-so of this draft, right? We're all clear on that. I didn't think I needed to say that, but I just want to make sure we're clear that this is not the end-all, be-all. We could revisit this draft 2 years from now and feel totally different about Johnny Newton, totally different about Luke McCaffrey, totally different about Jordan McGee, because we already feel really good about Jayden Daniels. We already feel really good about Mikey Sainristil. And Brandon Coleman could be a Pro Bowl guard 2 years from now. Ben Sinnott could be a fringe Pro Bowl tight end 2 years from now. So again, we'll revisit this down the road. I didn't think I needed to say that, but sometimes things that you think are understood that doesn't need to be said, sometimes you need to say them anyway. This is a C+ draft so far after 1 year from Adam Peters. Almost a B- draft, but it's a C+ draft. You hit on a star quarterback, superstar quarterback. I mean, that in itself could probably make this an A draft, honestly. But you hit on a franchise-altering quarterback. You hit on a star at the cornerback position. We think a young budding star there. Hopefully he turns out to be just as every bit as good as he was outside, inside. And you got a bunch of guys that you want to see more from. But like in the case of Brandon Coleman, we got a starting offensive lineman there. I think Jordan McGee is going to be a starting middle linebacker in this league. Just got to stay healthy. What will we get? What I think will ultimately define this draft in terms of that. So we're at a C right now, right? C+. What's going to either move the needle, back towards a C, C-, or up towards a B+, is Jayden Newton and Ben Sinnott, those 2 second-round picks. That's what's ultimately going to move the needle. And then if you get anything out of any of the other guys, right? You get something out of Jordan McGee as a 5th-round pick. You get anything out of, Dominique Hampton as a 5th-round pick. Whoa, what are we talking about, right? But right now, what's going to move that needle forward is if those 2 second-rounders that right now didn't perform at the level that we were looking for them to, perform at, step it up. That's going to move the needle forward. If they don't, it's going to move the needle the other opposite way, right? So, in my mind's eye, you hit a superstar quarterback, you start with an A right there, A+. But you still had 8 more picks after that. And it's not like you found the superstar quarterback in the 3rd round, right? He was the 2nd pick. And I thought the Bears made it easy on us by taking Caleb Williams. What would have been interesting is would they have taken Jayden number 1 overall if they had the number 1 pick? Would they have taken Jayden or would they have taken Caleb Williams? I wonder what they would have done. We'll never know, and I'm glad we don't have to find out. I'm glad we don't have to find out. So, ultimately, Jayden Daniels, Mike Sainristil are your hits right now. And keep in mind, if you hit on 30% of your draft as a GM, you won. That's all you're looking for, right? So out of these 9 selections, you hit on 3 of them, you won. The reason why this isn't a B right now is because we haven't hit on 3 yet. We only hit on 2. You move Brandon Coleman to guard, I believe you've hit on 3. At that point, I'm willing to move this thing to probably a B, a solid, rock solid B. And then if you hit on either one of those other 2 second-round picks, just one of them, now you're flirting around with that B+ territory. And if Jordan McGee is what I think he's going to be, now it's an A draft. That's where my mind is. You hit on 30% of your draft with one of them being a franchise-altering quarterback. You're already trending towards B-A territory. You want to go over the hump? You want to go over the top? You need to hit on one of these other second-rounders, and Brandon Coleman needs to pan out, which I think he is going to. He's one of the 3 that I'm counting right now. Can't count him fully yet because I got to see what the hell they're going to do with him. But I know he's a starting guard already. They just got to put him there, right? I anticipate, just listening to them talk, I anticipate they're going to put Brandon Coleman at guard this year. That's my anticipation. I think they're going to attack left tackle in free agency. There are enough left tackles available this free agency period. Now, again, that could change, right? That could change with teams keeping their stuff. If the Rams decide to keep their tackles, well, now all of a sudden the market doesn't look as good. Maybe they go get Ronnie Stanley. They're going to do something. I'm going to tell you right now, they're going to do something at left tackle. And I think that's going to prompt them to move Brandon Coleman, which when they drafted him, they said, hey, you're going to help us at tackle or guard or something. They already knew. They weren't sure, but he's going to help us somewhere. I think it's guard. And if you get a win there, coupled with Sainristil and Jayden Daniels, it's already a win draft, right? I just need one more guy. Coleman, I think, is going to be that guy. And then if I get one of those other two second rounders, Johnny Newton or Ben Sinnott to end up being their worth as a second round pick. Again, now we're in the B territory, B+ territory. You get Jordan McGee or Luke McCaffrey, but I'm more so that 5th round is big. You get Jordan McGee as a 5th rounder to hit. Now it's an A draft. So anyway, I digress. Let's get to the comment section and then we'll get out of here. I didn't mean to talk you to death on a Saturday, but my phone came. Woo! I'm excited. I can't wait to play with it. Set it up, all that good stuff. But let's see what you guys are talking about, and we'll get out of here. The Commandalorian, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. The Commandalorian writes, L. Jackson, DN, Arkansas, 29th pick, if no Garrett. Again, I can't talk to you about the draft right now. So much time between. The reason why the draft isn't as important to me right now is because unlike other sports where the draft comes after or first before free agency, the NFL does it the other way around. I actually like the way that they do it. I think it's more impactful when you already know what holes you have on your roster that you need to fill via the draft than other way around. Like, I think there's a level of desperation that sets in if you draft first and now you got to go to free agency to fill your holes. Now you're going to spend unnecessary money. Doing it this way, I feel, allows you to spend the money that you feel is necessary, right? You don't overspend for guys due to desperation, right? Because you still got the draft you can fall back on. I can still get a guy in the draft. So I don't need to reach, I don't need to overspend. Now, if I go to the draft first and I don't get what I need out of the draft, now I feel the pressure of having to address these holes. This is my last chance to address these issues. I got to throw extra money to make sure that this problem doesn't exist. So I like the way the NFL does it. But free agency comes first. So we'll know a lot more about what is a need and what isn't. I think defensive end is going to be a need regardless. Whether you get a Myles Garrett or not, you're still going to need some depth. But if you get a Myles Garrett, you're not going to have that 1st round pick, right? Which is why you said if no Myles Garrett, of course. You're not going to have that 1st round pick, assuming that it happens, before this year's draft, but which I would assume is going to be the case. But even if you sign a guy in free agency, doesn't necessarily take away the opportunity to draft. Because at that point, I just want the best player available. And I've already said, outside of quarterback, no position is out of bounds for us to take. We need everything. We need everything. King of the Bluegrass, been a member for 35 months, almost at that 3-year Annie. Writes, what up, Lou? Brandon Coleman was a part of the 2 worst championship losses in history as an offensive line starter. Pretty crazy. Got blown out in the national championship versus Georgia. Got blown out in the NFC championship game. And if I'm not, did they give up 55 in that game too? Or was it 56? It was 50 something, I believe they gave up though. Or was it 63? It was a pretty badass whooping that they took at the hands. They didn't belong in that game. That should have been Michigan, right? They shouldn't have been there, but they got there. Can't take it away from them. And then obviously we got our asses handed to us, belt to ass in NFC championship game, unfortunately. That is pretty crazy. Christopher McLaughlin, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy, C-Mac, thank you for the super chat. Right. Hey, Lou. Sup, Chris? Hope all is well with you and the family. Likewise. We have to give players in 2024 draft class at least 3 years to determine a fair grade. Absolutely. That's what I just said. And I wanted to make sure that that was apparent. Like, what is understood doesn't need to be said. I would hope that everyone would understand. Of all people, me, who always preaches patience, I would hope that you guys would understand that. But I said it again anyway, just to make sure we're on the same page, that no one is trying to write these guys off or write their stories after one season of football. That's insane. Question: what are your thoughts on if the team selects Ben Morrison from Notre Dame in the first round, and why? I'm always a little skeptical on selecting guys in the first round of a draft who are coming off of a season in which they had a significant injury. I'm always leery of that. So I don't know. Like, again, I don't know where he is in his process. It happened, middle of the season, of the Notre Dame season. So he got a head start on the process of recovery and things of that nature. But I have a hard time believing that he's going to be up and running around by the time we get to the pre-draft workouts and things of that nature. You want to take Ben Morrison, do it in the second round. I have no issues with that. I don't want a guy who's coming off of major surgery as my first round pick. I'm not looking for that. I remember the Eagles did that with Sidney Jones out of Washington, and it didn't work out well for them. I just, normally when that happens, it doesn't work out good for the team that makes that investment. So I need to know that you're healthy in order to spend a first round pick on you. So with that said, is he a first round talent? I believe so. That might slip because of his injury, but I'm not willing to be the one to stop the slide thinking I got, like, I don't want to see the Bryce Young or Bryce Love effect all over again, where, you think you're getting it, but that was a third round pick, right? But you think you're getting everybody's passing on this guy because of his injury concerns. And then he never plays it down for you, right? And everybody's concerns were validated. It's different than when Jonathan Allen fell down the draft board to us because people were concerned about his neck. Well, he was perfectly fine and healthy, right? People passed on Montez Sweat. The only reason we got Montez Sweat is because he had the heart, situation. People were a little nervous about his heart, that he had a heart defect. So he fell down the draft board, but he was perfectly fine, right? He wasn't going to miss any time in camp or the season or any of that. We don't know when Ben Morrison is going to be back. So I'll just say I wouldn't take him, and that's why. My guy, Christopher McLaughlin, been a member for 4 months. Really appreciate you as always. Who writes, "Hey Lou, our O-line, both tackle positions, and D-line, edge, are the biggest needs now. And what separates us from the Eagles?" I don't disagree with that. What would you do in the draft to obtain at least the new right tackle to replace Wiley, and why? So I can't tell you what I would do as far as Wiley. I think it would be smart on their part. Like, this is how I would go about it, right? I think if they were smart, and again, I trust whatever they decide to do. I'm not smarter than them. I'm not there every day. I'm not there seeing these guys. I don't have access to all of the stuff that they have access to. But I'm just telling you, as someone that watches way more football than any human should, that isn't actually getting paid by an organization, I will tell you that I personally would attack left tackle in free agency, move Brandon Coleman to left guard, right? Hope that Cosme's ready to start the season at right guard, which is not out of the realm of possibility. But even if he's not, you can move Allegretti to right guard, right? Draft a right tackle, okay? But you're not looking to start that right tackle right away, right? He'll come in, he can compete. If you are blown away by this kid, because this is what I'm hearing. I haven't done the work yet, And those of you who have already started the process or already knee deep in draft content, you can speak to this. But I've heard this is not a strong tackle draft. There isn't even an elite prospect this year. The Will Campbell or whatever his name guy from LSU, not like there's no Penei Sewell in this draft. Not a single one. Okay. They're in the dominant tackle in this draft. So with that said, like there's no Tristan Wirfs in this draft. This is what I'm being told. Now, I can't say that for certain, but I've heard that multiple times already. So I'm going in and I'm trying to go in with an open mind and not allow the noise to affect me when I go in. But that's what I've been told multiple times by people I trust. So with that said, you're probably not going to find anything elite. So I don't expect them to draft a guy, say in the 3rd round, that's going to come in here and start over Andrew Wiley. But you want him developing so that next year, when Wiley comes off the books, this rookie 2nd-year guy now will be ready to start. That's how I would attack the right tackle position. I wouldn't go move on from Wiley. There's no reason to. He's not getting paid a ton of money. He's not hurting you cap-wise. I actually thought this was his best season in Washington, of the two. He far exceeded my expectations this year. Not telling you that he's great, but he was a sieve last year, right? He was a liability. He was not a liability this year. He's not a difference maker, right? But that's what I would do. That's what I would do. Rob Yu, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, "Hey Lou, thoughts on Asante Samuel Jr.? He's solid. He's solid. And we talked about him the other night, like briefly in passing, because I don't think he's the type of corner that they want here. Again, they're looking for taller, longer, faster corners, guys that attack the football. He's none of that. He doesn't have a ton of ball production in Los Angeles. He's not a tall guy. He's actually undersized for the cornerback position, which was the knock on him coming out of Florida State. And he's a bit, I don't call him slow, but he's not the fastest corner either, right? So that's something else to consider when you think about Asante Samuel. I don't think he's a guy, like, if you're going to go with a corner of that stature, you might as well go sign DJ Reed. And while DJ Reed is a lot shorter than him, he's probably a better corner than Asante Samuel Jr. So for me, I think they're looking for a prototypical size corner. They're not looking for the undersized guy. They did that with Mikey last year out of necessity, and he played his ass off, but they're not trying to do that again. Rob Yu, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes, Newton was getting pushed around, but loved the hustle. Yeah, he looked undersized last year. There were times where you went, whoa. They absolutely took him, uprooted him, 2 gaps over, and took his ass and like blew him like he was a piece of trash in a hurricane, right? So, yeah, his thing was never strength or anything like. His thing was quickness, agility. That's what he was supposed to win with. That was supposed to be his superpower coming into the league, was Johnny Newton could beat you with quickness off the snap. We didn't see that this year. He didn't have immediate wins. I'm hoping that we can see some of that next year. Hoping we can see a lot more of that next year. Never question his hustle or his desire to get to the football. That's something you'll never hear me do with Johnny Newton. Rob Yu, thank you for the super chat. Or excuse me, Chauncey Davis, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy, CD triple OG. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Writes, Lou, because of our mediocre play at the end, most teams double-teamed our defensive tackles. With improved play at defensive end, don't sleep on Newton. And while I hear you, I don't think teams were like specifically singling out our defensive tackles and like, we have to double team. Like, they weren't treating our guys like Chris Jones. You know, they weren't treating our guys like Jalen Carter or anything like that. I don't want to get the narrative misconstrued. Like, yeah, they were running duos up front where they would double team the defensive tackles and work off of them to get up to the second level to the linebackers and whatnot. But make no mistake about it. These weren't, it wasn't a ton of double teams taking place. Like, Deron Payne was getting singled up. Jonathan Allen was getting singled up. Johnny Newton was getting singled up. They just weren't winning a ton, you know? They weren't making enough game-altering plays, so to speak. But at some point, you're not looking for guys to make game-altering plays. You just want them to do their job. And by the time we got to the end of the season, the defensive tackles were doing their job. They weren't doing more than that. And again, if you're the highest paid player on the team, I'm not looking for you to just do your job. I'm looking for more than that from you. You know what I'm saying? I think that's why people are disappointed in Jonathan Allen and Deron Payne. Because at this point of their careers and for where they sit on the totem pole of salaries within this roster and organization, we need more than just guys that are okay. So I'm not sleeping on Johnny Newton at all. Not sleeping on him at all. And I'm expecting big things from him this upcoming season. Working out with Jonathan Allen, got a full offseason in front of him. Now he knows how the NFL works. You know, he's got enough tape on himself to see what he needs to work on and improve upon. I got nothing but high hopes for him. We'll see what happens. Anyway, I digress. That's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on this impromptu edition of the Command Post Live. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. Want to give a quick shout out to BetUS for sponsoring this stream. You're looking for a new book. Once again, BetUS is got you covered. Fastest payouts in the industry. Get up to 10% back on your net losses twice a year. And again, use the promo code YouTube150 to get you 150% sign-up bonus on your first deposit up to $2,000 and 125% sign-up bonus on the next two deposits up to $2,000 when you use the promo code YouTube150. You guys enjoy the rest of your Saturday, and how the game tomorrow goes will determine if you enjoy your entire weekend. I know this much. If the next 6 months are to be truly enjoyable, the Chiefs need to win tomorrow. That's all I got to say. Anyway, you guys leave it down in the comment section. The grades that I gave, what are your grades? You know, what have you seen from some of these players? How do you feel 1 year removed from the first draft turned in by Adam Peters and his staff? What do you think 1 year in? Obviously, we're not going to, write the story on these guys after one season. We only know about two guys in this draft right now, and that's Mike Sainristil and Jayden Daniels. And even Mikey, we don't know what he is as a nickel. We just know what he is as a boundary right now. Got to see what he's going to be able to do for us. But I got no doubts he's going to go in there and kick ass. I think Coleman's a starter. I think he's a guard, but I've said that many a times. And we'll find out about the rest of these guys. Leave it down in the comment section. What do you think? In any event, that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T. You guys get out of here. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. And I'll see you guys tomorrow for Super Bowl 59. If there's a God that loves us, that smiles down on us, the Chiefs will win tomorrow. I'll see you guys hopefully after a Kansas City Chiefs victory. Have a good one.